Others change by your imagination. So the premise of our conversation is this quote here where he says, "Do not dwell on the imperfections of yourself or others. To do so is to impress the subconscious with these limitations. What you do not want done unto you, do not feel that it is done unto you or another. This is the whole law of a full and happy life." We've mentioned in last week's video, we first start with self. And so we start with I. The I has neither face, form, no figure, but it does mold itself into structure by all that it consents to and all that it believes. I'm speaking about awareness. We are aware, I. The changing of the feeling of I is a selective thing. The I believes itself to be the state when it enters and fuses with it. I had fused with, in my past, certain beliefs. In relationships, they might not accept or value me. These were ideas that I fused with, conclusions that I formed within myself in relation to experiences that I had with others. And so it would play out in the different relationships in my life. They would say things and demonstrate in their behaviors lack of acceptance, lack of value. These were beliefs that I was fusing with. And as we work with this information, we realize that we are complete inside. Everything exists within us. So what is there not to accept if we can imagine anything and fuse with any state that we desire? So I would suggest then, further identifying with the idea of acceptance and value. You are complete inside, thus infinite in value. You see in your mind's eye what you desire, and you accept it. And we have the opportunity to do this every day. With anyone that we think of, anyone that we interact with, how are we imagining them? When a person shows up and says, "This is what I desire," my goal is to accept that their vision is reality. As to recognize and accept them is to also accept and recognize within myself all that I accept in myself. And so we look at this carefully here. Others change by your imagination. We actually change ourselves, and others reflect. If there's any doubt in them accepting themselves, we don't have to identify with that doubt. We could release it. How do we see them? We see them as we see ourselves. And so they communicate, "I might not have the value," in which I write down in my book here, or I could say it to myself. They find the value. They recognize that they are valuable. They are valuable. They are valuable. They know that they're valuable. Then I observe the conversation change. As he says here, "We have given you a system by which you change it. For those who haven't heard why I say you walk tracks, you are standing forever in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy. And from this energy all things proceed, but they proceed according to pattern. Energy is moving in a certain pattern, and you determine the pattern that it takes. For you actually lay down these tracks within you. That energy flows over by the use of your inner conversations. This energy, I call it now mind, follows the tracks laid down in our inner talking. So if your inner conversations are not what they should be, I ask you today to start carrying on conversations within yourself from the premises of fulfilled ideas." And so when a person imagines relationships with others in any shape or form, are they also identifying throughout the day in an inner dialogue in relation to lack of acceptance and value? If so, as he says here, inwardly carry on conversations with your friends, those that respect you, or those you want to respect you, and carry on these conversations from the premises that they see you, that you want the world to see, just as though you were. And these words, inner words, which are really the breeding ground of future action, will lay down the tracks, and then the energy, which is always flowing, will flow over these tracks, and the conditions and circumstances of life will change. You'll change, and you'll observe as they change. So every day we are presented with opportunities. People show up in our presence. We imagine them in our mind's eye. And how are we imagining them? Are we imagining them from the premise of how we see ourselves in ideal relationships with them? Or are we imagining them from perhaps ideas such as lack of acceptance, lack of value, lack of interest? And if that's so, that is what we're putting our energy on, or mind on, as he says here. This energy, I call it now mine, follows the tracks laid down in our inner talking. So at any moment, we have an opportunity to be aware of the state of mind that we're in. The state of mind shall automatically express from that premise. And so the idea, we represent them in our mind's eye as how it would be in an ideal relationship with them. And we do this inwardly, as he says. Inwardly carry on conversations with your friends, those that respect you, or those you want to respect you, and carry on these conversations from the premise that they see in you that you want the world to see, as though you were there. And these words, inner words, which are really the breeding grounds for future action, will lay down new tracks, and the energy, which is always flowing, will flow over these tracks, and the conditions and the circumstances of life will change. And so others reflect the change within us. And so the idea of dwelling on imperfection in ourselves or in others is to impress the subconscious with these limitations. To acknowledge and to encourage that they are perfect now in yourself is to impress the subconscious mind with that perfection. As he states, what you do not want done unto you, do not feel that it is done unto you or another. This is the whole law of a full and happy life. And so for me, it's a feeling. I wake up in the morning, I read my statements of intent, I get into that feeling, and I maintain that feeling. And what I noticed, for example, I went away last week to Mexico, is that the conversations that play out with others seem to be from a mutual harmony of acceptance, recognizing value, and being interested. People show up saying the same ideal things that I have been imagining. Over the years of going there, I've made a lot of friends. Every time I go there, they seem to change. They seem to now communicate about the same ideas and views of myself and reality. And they came to these conclusions in their own way. They talk about their experiences, and they share with me their conclusions of how they have found a deeper acceptance of themselves, how they have found that their attention automatically goes on what they're interested in, how they feel complete inside. And all of these things that we talk about over the last handful of videos in relation to Neville's work. So we see the changes then. Others change by our imagination, and they seem to play out in verbal and nonverbal communication, the inner conversations from the premise of the fulfilled idea, repeating the exact words. For instance, one of my friends, Jeff, who actually ended up moving to Mexico, a day before I met up with him, I wrote these statements down, such as, reality works the way I believe it does. It happens because I want it. It happens because I desire it. People understand what I mean. And so in our conversation, he brought up these exact statements. Same note, I have it on my phone right here. His friend repeated to me this other note that I wrote down. We see just how much of illusion force is. So it's interesting then that the changes occur within first, and then others show up revealing the changes within us. And what I found upon reflection in my past is as long as those inner conversations remain the same, then the friendships, the relationships, the conversations, and others in my life also remain the same. And as I change, everyone around me also change. This is true for friendships, personal relationships, business relationships, romantic relationships. And so to work with this, we take the responsibility, as he says. And so we start with I. The I has neither face, form, nor figure, but it does mold itself into structure by all that it consents to, all that it believes. So what are we believing? From the premise of lack of acceptance, lack of value, knowing that this is what we're giving energy to, as we go back to the beginning here. What you do not want done unto you, do not feel that it is done unto you or another. This is the whole law of a full and happy life. Energy is moving in a certain pattern, and you determine the pattern that it takes. For you actually lay down these tracks within you that energy flows over by the use of your inner conversations. You can bring yourself into the feeling now by suggesting to yourself, and we observe our inner conversations seem to be one of acceptance, of value, and encouraging our desires, what we love, and what we're interested in. And every day, when we're interacting with others, when we're imagining others, When we're carrying on inner conversations with ourselves, thus interacting with ourselves, we can dwell in the acceptance, value, and interest, symbolic of the perfection and completion inside. And if, for whatever the reason may be, a thought of imperfection shows up in mind, in relation to yourself, in relation to others, we can allow it to pass, and as he says here, the I has neither face, form, nor figure, but it does mold itself into structure by all that it consents to. And so we consent to the ideal state of mind, inwardly carrying on conversations with your friends, those that respect you, or those you want to respect you, from the premise that they see this acceptance, this value, this completion within you, whatever that implies, and you will feel the changes within you in the moment. And in the most natural way, you'll see the changes and perhaps your own inner conversations playing out as others show up reflecting the energy, as he says here. This energy, I call it now mind, follows the tracks laid down in our inner talking, and will observe that others reflect our energy. And it plays out as others saying the same things that we imagine them to say. Accepting us, being interested in us, and valuing us from the perspective of the completion and perfection you are now. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. We can say, I accept myself now. I value myself now. I am complete inside. I am fulfilled inside. I imagine anything I desire and recognize it's mine. Who I desire desires me. Who I love loves me. All experience is a reflection of the infinite world within, in which all is one, complete, and perfect now. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.